Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the US policy towards Afghanistan and the future role of Pakistan. As we all know that the Taliban, they have criticized the United States for violating Doha Accords. And they say this killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri was an absolute issue regarding the sovereignty of Afghanistan. And they also said that at the same time, the United States of America has also mentioned that Zawahiri's presence in Afghanistan perhaps was also against the Doha Accords. Now, the United States of America has refused to release around $7 billion. That was the money of the people of Afghanistan, and they have refused to give these funds to the Afghan government after the killing of Zawahiri. Earlier, I'll tell you earlier, there were reports that the United States of America really agreed on certain grounds with the Taliban senior leadership that they will release this amount, not the total amount, but a certain percentage, could be around $3 to $4 billion, provided certain actions are supposed to be taken in Afghanistan. Then the future of Taliban's attempts to, in fact, gain diplomatic recognition, as we all know that 15th of August last year, 2021, was the date when the Kabul fell and eventually the Taliban, they took over. And we all know exactly what happened. The Americans, they just left Afghanistan in haste and hurry, and even their senior leadership wasn't informed. And then we saw Mr. Ghani, in fact, escaping from Afghanistan along with his senior leadership. Question marks over Taliban's commitments in Doha Accords. This was again stated by the Americans. US withholding frozen funds likely to worsen humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Around 1.1 million people, that is the number that what we have in fact got. And they say that 1.1 million children are really getting affected because of the unavailability of food and the other produce. But despite this odd equation, if you look at the Afghan government, I think they are doing a pretty good job so far without receiving any funds, without in fact having any sort of a support from the other country, without even being recognized. Initially we all thought that something is going to happen, exactly what happened earlier when Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and UAE recognized their governments, and they in fact released a lot of funds and they supported the Afghan government. Not this time. Now, what exactly is happening, and especially post the killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri? What exactly is the situation in Afghanistan, and where exactly is it heading? A lot of people do believe that somewhat civil war-like situation is going to erupt, and that is going to perhaps really disturb the overall related issues and the fabric of society, as they say. But what we have witnessed that things are pretty bad, but at least there is no civil war going on. Now, to talk about this, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio, on my right is Dr. Manzoor Afridi Saab, expert on foreign affairs and especially regarding the Afghan issues. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for your time. And on Skype, we have with us Dr. Syed Akhtar Ali Saab, former IGP, KP. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and welcome to the program. And we're really thankful for taking your time out and being a part of our show. And on the telephone, we'll be talking to Mr. Asif Durrani, sir, former ambassador, senior diplomat. He's also going to join us around 8:30. But let me put the first question to you, Manzoor Afridi Saab. First of all, sir, is it just a rumor, or is it a reality that there was this meeting, it was held around a month ago, between the senior leadership of the Taliban and some of the senior leadership of the Americans, perhaps the military leadership. And eventually they discussed a couple of very important points, and it was decided that the Americans need to do a couple of activities, and perhaps they were referring to the killing of al-Zawahiri or something similar. And they said that then we can always negotiate regarding your funds. But now they've refused. So let's throw light on that aspect, Dr. Saab. What sort of information do you have to share with us?
According to various reports, yes, it was certain that United States administration was willing to release the 3.5 billion US dollars fund of Afghanistan to the Taliban government. And actually, it is United States where there is, we can say, an obstacle in the way of release of almost 9 billion US dollars of all the foreign assets where the Afghanistan is a state. It has in many countries, and especially those are in Western countries. And out of that, 7 billion US dollars, those are in United States. And out of those 7, the half amount, I mean $3.5 billion, they were going to release by the US administration. And yes, reports, they say that there were negotiations between the Taliban senior leadership and the US administration, and they were dealing for it. If we see, I think both the parties, they were in need of this. I mean, on the one side, the Afghan government, because they even now need a single penny that anybody, any country or organization can help the Afghan state or government. On the other hand, United States is also willing for it because it waited almost 1 year and it saw the situation. And also the US, that is in a kind of, we can say, a disturbance that this hunger or this non-availability of resources or the this freezing of the Afghan assets outside, it can bring some kind of turmoil, the political instability, or even the a kind of new wave of terrorism. So that's why it was also willing. But now the killing of the Ayman al-Zawahiri, of course, it's a question mark for which Taliban, they are also upset, you know, and they have called it as the abrogation and as the violation of the Doha Agreement, which was signed with the US back in 2020, almost 2 years back. So that's why we can say that now there is a thorn in the negotiations or in the relationship of both countries, Afghanistan and the United States. Now, how it will affect the relationship between these two states, how it will show the reaction of the Taliban leadership, I mean the Afghan government, towards the world or international community. Of course, we have to wait for it. But the incident, I mean the killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri, it is, I think, very big if we see the relationship between the two countries. And in this point, in this, you know, very urgent time, in the wake of international assistance, the needed international assistance, humanitarian assistance for the Afghan masses and for the Afghan government.
All right, now let's also bring in Dr. Syed Akhtar Ali into the conversation. Now, Dr. Saab, if obviously when we talk about the Doha Accords, I mean, one of the very important points was that the Afghan government or the Taliban regime will not let any terrorist stay in Afghanistan, or perhaps, let me rephrase it, the Afghan soil will not be used against any country. That means that nobody is going to be there who could be harmful to the neighboring countries or perhaps to even United States of America. Now, if you remember, post 9/11, so main mission was to eliminate Osama bin Laden, who was supposedly the mastermind behind this. Now, this man was still number 2. He was himself a doctor. I'm talking about Ayman Zawahiri, was a surgeon, was a personal doctor to the former chief of Al-Qaeda. Now, since he took charge as the chief of Al-Qaeda, and this man was living in Afghanistan, and I'm not saying in some far-flung area, in Kabul, and we all know where he was killed, if he was killed there. Again, that is a big question. The concept is this, when we say that the Americans say that the Afghan government or the regime, in fact, was supporting and they knew about it, and he was harboring in Afghanistan, and perhaps the Afghan Taliban knew about him. On the other hand, the Taliban, they claim that their sovereignty was challenged when this drone attack took place, and we have heard that 2 Hellfire missiles were fired, and this man was killed while he was standing early in the morning on his balcony, and he was eliminated. Now, the question is that perhaps who betrayed who? The question is of trust deficit, number 1. And secondly, sir, what sort of a fallout factor do you believe is going to be there as far as Pakistan is concerned? Dr. Syed Akhtar Ali Saab.
As far as the trust deficit is concerned between the Afghanistan and United States, the initial statement issued by the United States was a condemnation that the Taliban have regarding counterterrorism operations. And simultaneously, the Taliban have reacted that the United States had not learned from their past experiences as far as these acts are. But in the long run, I would say that in international politics and in foreign relations, there is nothing permanent. Certain events would not ultimately mark the relations. We have to see that Taliban government, they are also facing certain difficulties within. There are also radical groups. There is a Qadari group, then the Haqqanis and the others. So while the United States are operating over there, so one can infer that there must be someone inside even in the Taliban ranks who had provided this information regarding his presence over there. It would not have been possible without information from the insider. So in the long run, I think things may improve because if you see, India has recently opened their embassy over there, and the Taliban has also issued a statement giving a commitment that their security would be ensured over there. So slowly the Taliban also, the government and Taliban, they are quite aware of their vulnerabilities, their weak areas, and without international assistance, and particularly without the superpower like United States. In the modern sense of the term, the state can't be run on modern lines. As far as its fallback on the area is concerned, when you take, for example, Pakistan, so there were some question marks, and some of these media circles also indicated that they might have been a role. But as far as evidence, cogent evidence is concerned, there is nothing over there where it could be established that the airspace of Pakistan had been used in this episode. So, and similarly, Taliban very well understand that without, because they have an informal economy as far as the economy is concerned. It has a private economy, it's a pastoral economy, mostly agriculture economy. So they are dependent, and their 40% of the budget, GDP, was dependent on international aid. So without interacting with the Pakistan, where they have trade in the informal sense, if one family is in Kabul or other areas of Afghanistan, the other family is either in Peshawar, Chaman, and other parts of Pakistan. So which is helping in an indirect way the economy of Afghanistan. So I don't think that would, in the long run, it will damage the relationship with the government of Pakistan and the Taliban's government.
All right. Now, Manzoor, one important factor, if you remember, countries like Russia, China, Iran, Qatar, even Pakistan, even we held this OIC special summit also regarding Afghanistan. The question is that they all asked for the release of the funds. And secondly, a lot of pledges also made. I remember Saudi government also agreed, their foreign minister was here in Pakistan. What about that deal, sir? Where do we exactly stand as far as those commitments are concerned? Or again, the American pressure is being applied on the Middle Eastern states not to release even a single penny?
Regional countries of Afghanistan, I mean the surrounding or neighboring countries, Central Asian states, China, Russia, as you mentioned, Iran, Turkey, Qatar, even Pakistan, all of them, they are there. And I think these countries, they want to have a kind of relief for the current Afghanistan's government. Yes, they have their commitments. There were visits, especially from Saudi Arabia to Pakistan, and also there were consultations, particularly between Pakistan and China regarding Afghanistan. Yes, there was a special summit of OIC have to deal with this Afghan imbroglio. But I think question is that nobody is ready to have this burden over its shoulders. I mean, they are just a kind of scared about the backlash, what they may have, or consequences in future, as the three countries, the Saudi Arabia or UAE and especially Pakistan, have they were dealing with the situation in the 5 years period of Taliban from 96 to 2001. This time, I think every country is very much cautious. Yes, Russia or China, we can say, a kind of leaders in this region, and Pakistan, the very much, the closest neighbor of Afghanistan. I think all of them, they are cautious. They say that, okay, we have to go with the international community. I mean, if we take an initiative by really recognizing the Afghan government, or having a kind of free assistance for them through the regional organization platform, or through bilateral interactions or transactions, I think they now this time they say that international community, the whole world, by this I mean the Western world, right, that these countries want to go parallel, to go side by side, shoulder by shoulder with this international community. Yes, these countries, they may have efforts to convince them to avoid any future big catastrophe in this situation, but they are also, on the other hand, cautious. So this is the policy, what we can say, the wait and see policy, that of course the dominant Western powers, the dominant Western northern hemisphere, or the north world, the north pole of the world, which has power, economic, military, strategic, political, all of them, they have influence. So what
We
they
should
decide,
also say media. That is the most important factor these days.
that is, I think, the most powerful in this regard. How they build the narratives, how they construct, and how they
narratives are
deconstruct
always
the
built in the
narratives.
Western world and
No
implemented
doubt,
here.
no doubt. So what they portray to the policymakers, to the business community, to academia, researchers, and common masses, they have to believe, because they have no other outlet and no such kind of resource where they have to confirm or to have authenticity of the news or reports. So simply to cut it short, these countries, they have wait and see policy, and now they want to join international community to avoid any kind of bad consequences in future.
Now, Afridi Sahab, there's another very important point. We have witnessed the highest ever, rupee to dollar parity. It was being traded at 255 in the open market, and now it is well under 220. Various decisions regarding IMF deal, and perhaps a couple of other factors too. It is generally believed that it wasn't only the money that was being sent abroad. A lot of dollars were also, because people withdrew over a billion and 1.2 billion, let me put it this way, from the commercial banks in the recent days. But sir, it is also a fact that a lot of dollars went to Afghanistan, and perhaps the bit of stability that we are seeing, not the worst case scenario, is perhaps because of the dollars which went to Afghanistan from Pakistan, and that created a scarcity of dollars in Pakistan, and the dollar went up to around 250. Is it true?
Yes, to some extent we have to believe, because many Afghan people, they are working here, they are refugees here, they have businesses here, and even Pakistanis, they are very much connected with the Afghan people who are concerned and who are engaged in big businesses. So to some extent, yes, it's true that this situation, what you mentioned, the half dollar it went up and half and now it went down, and also there is a little bit stability, economic stability, what we see and observe in Afghanistan. I mean, half the reports the United Nations or other human rights organizations, how they were portraying and they were reported, especially if we see in the last winter in November, December or in January, that Afghanistan is going to collapse or the government will not be able. So the worst case is not there. Of course, there are disturbances. I mean, the economic sector that is not stable, nobody believes in it, of course. But the worst case we have not seen. And yes, to some extent we can say that it was true that such things happened and it gave a kind of stability, economic stability to the Afghanistan
to some extent. Now, another important factor, sir, because since we are talking about the change in the regime in Afghanistan, and again, it's been almost a year, then two important incidents regarding the killing of Al-Zawahiri, and perhaps the chief of this moment chapter, Umar Khalid Khurasani, was also eliminated. Not sure whether he has been killed, but this has been reported. So you can't confirm unless until you see the dead body. Now, also enlighten our viewers about one important factor, and that the Taliban regime, according to the Indians, they call it Taliban 2.0 version. We all thought that perhaps things have changed. Now women's rights will be given. For example, the girls' education will not be stopped. Perhaps the schools and colleges and universities will have a good number of students attending their classes. But what we witnessed over a period of time, and this is what we have also learned from various sources, that this is not the case. There are still restrictions on women, and there are a couple of, I mean, the other day we were reading a story and they said that every single woman needs to have a mehram, a man with her when she goes out, and so forth. The typical Islamic regime of, let's say 1500 years ago, that kind of a formula. Now, the second important point is, sir, that during the last 22 years, ever since Afghanistan was invaded by the Americans, and then they had their own regimes, whether it was of Ashraf Ghani or previously Mr. Karzai, both were in power. Karzai was in power twice. What I'm saying is, Aji Saab, tell us, enlighten the viewers as well, that the kind of difference that everybody expected from the previous regime of the Taliban and the current, they all thought that this is the new one. Things will perhaps change, and change for good. Because those kids who were born even in 1999, 2000, I mean, these kids carry a mobile phone, they have access to internet, they have exposure and whatnot. I mean, I won't say 100%, but the urban population got a little westernized also. And certainly there is a regime change back to square one. What sort of a repercussion do you see of that, sir? IG Saab.
It's to me.
Yes, for you, sir.
Okay. So as far as the change, first we have to understand that one is at the top, the leadership, who have been exposed to the world. They were sitting in Doha and other countries negotiating. But simultaneously, their audience is their rank and file in Afghanistan, who believe in the narrow interpretation of Islam, where there is an assigned role for the woman. So even the Taliban, while knowing that what would be the reaction of the world, they have also to cater for the sentiments of their own cadre from the lower ranks up to the top. So, but at the same time, when all is said and done, the Taliban, one of the most serious problem in Afghanistan during the last these few years conflict was the threat to the life and property of the citizens within Afghanistan. So it was their yearning to have protection of their life, the right to life. So as far as this is concerned, the Taliban, even the United Nations reports, they also indicate that on this score, Taliban had been successful as far as security, it has improved. As far as the women rights are concerned, or other rights are concerned from the perspective of democracy, human rights. So on that score, there is a failure, of course. And for as far as the Western countries are concerned, the European Union or the United States, they are not more concerned regarding the human rights issues or the women rights issues because before us there are other countries within the Middle East where still there are human rights issues, but the United States is maintaining diplomatic relations, offering security to their regimes. Their only concern in Afghanistan was and would remain whether that land is being used against their interests. If once the Taliban assures that their land would no longer be used against their strategic interests, then I am hopeful that things as far as the financial aid and their dollars, $9 billion stashed in the United States and other banks would be released gradually. But they have to give assurance to the international world that their land would no longer be used as a bastion of terrorism against other nations.
All right, we've also been joined by Ambassador Asif Durrani Saab, senior diplomat. Assalamu alaikum, Durrani Saab.
Ji walaikum assalam.
So good to have you in the program. Now, sir, there was a very common saying which we have heard from almost all the generals and the politicians that peace in Afghanistan means peace in Pakistan. So now we have also learned that economic stability in Afghanistan means economic stability in Pakistan. But if there is a problem in Afghanistan, they would largely depend on the neighbors, and perhaps that is also going to hamper and create a lot of economic problems for Pakistan too. Your point on that, sir?
Well, United States, when it withdrew from Afghanistan, there was a hope that peace will return. So, by and large, there is peace in Afghanistan. There is no doubt about it. But I think under the Plan B, the United States squeezed the Taliban by imposing sanctions and freezing their accounts. So, in a way, then Taliban regime, in fact, has become ineffective as far as economic activity is concerned. Their banks cannot do business with the rest of the world. So this is in a way of punishment or vengeance which the United States has had against the Taliban, despite the fact that they withdrew under an agreement. So one aspect is this one. Second is that yes, in the neighborhood, the positive sign.
Durrani Saab, sorry to cut you here, sir. Sorry to cut you here, sir. We will just get back to you. We'll have to take a short break, and we'll return right after that. Welcome back. Ji Durrani Saab, if you can hear me, sir, please, you may carry on, sir, from where you left.
As far as neighborhood is concerned, the positive sign is that the trade between Pakistan and Afghanistan has increased. And for the first time, the trade balance is in Afghanistan's favor. It is a positive sign because it is contributing to the Afghan economy. Same is the case with China and Tajikistan and Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. Russia has also, in fact, offered concessional trade to Afghans, to the Taliban regime. So, and for the first time, they presented their budget in May, which was without any foreign assistance. Otherwise, 80% of the Afghan budget was borne by the Americans and the European assistance, through the European assistance. So, in a way, it is possible. But overall, the situation remains you can say it's a stalemate, and that stalemate is going to last till the time there is a compromise on the human rights issues. Because I don't think that America and European Union are going to do any compromise because of the domestic pressures in their own constituencies, where they think very serious about the human rights, especially the women's rights. And then the education of the women, that is also there. Although Taliban claim that there are private universities and schools which are open and which they have allowed, still they have to do a lot, yes.
Durrani Sahab, killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri, it has raised a lot of questions. One of the question was that from where did the drone fly and which route was used to kill Zawahiri? Two of these missiles, Hellfire, they were, sent through the drone, and pinpoint accuracy was also observed and the man was eliminated. Fallout factor on Pakistan, sir?
Well, if you look at the geography of Afghanistan, so I think only Pakistan is a possible country from where the drone have overflown. Because certainly Iran, China, the Central Asian states, technically they don't can facilitate. Only Iran is another country through where the American drone could fly. So in that respect, yes, the fallout, I think then Taliban should think about it, that how they have been, Zawahiri was living in the heart of Kabul, especially in the posh locality of Kabul, and they would not know it. And then the Taliban defense minister, Interior Minister Sirajuddin Haqqani lives just 100 meters away, and so no one is going to believe that no one knew about Zawahiri's presence in Kabul. And then there's also another fact which needs to be considered, is that it was an insider's job amongst the Taliban, who had in fact informed about Zawahiri's presence. The kind of accuracy which you see in hitting Zawahiri, so it can only be the job through an insider's information. So it's a mixed package, and fallout would be both for Pakistan and Afghanistan also, because if there are more sleeping cells of Al-Qaeda, so I think Americans, if they get the information, they are going to take action. And mind you, these actions are not illegal, because these are covered under the Resolution 1267, Resolution 1368 and 1373 of the UN Security Council, which are under Chapter 7, which means you have to enforce those people who are take into account those people who have been identified in that list. So Zawahiri was one of them. And then there'll be other people, if they figure in those lists, so they are to be taken into account. So Taliban will have to realize that they are not living in an island. They have to be part of the international community. If they want to be part of the international community, then they'll have to comply with the international rules. Yes.
But sir, last quick comment. I mean, if they have to be civilized and they have to be a part of the international community, at least their regime, or let me use this word, the government should be recognized also, sir. They are doing what all United Nations says. And this is all about pick and choose, that this suits me, this is in my national interest, so we'll do that. But this seems to be in their national interest. So, we'll challenge their sovereignty, we'll stop their funds. I mean, double standards, aren't there, sir?
No, I don't think Taliban are in a bargaining position. If they continue to, create hurdles in implementing the human rights, especially women's rights, I don't think that the world is going to recognize that. We should be clear, there shouldn't be any doubt in our minds. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Durrani Sahab, for your comments. Now coming to you, Afridi Sahab. The Taliban, Once they took over, we got to know that since IS will be eliminated, we also got to know that $83 billion worth of weapons they have. And there are so many other splinter groups, the non-Pashtun or perhaps anti-Taliban sentiment was also there among various factions. And then the presence of ISIS, Al-Qaeda and a couple of other groups. So we thought that, since the Taliban regime, they do not have any design beyond the borders of Afghanistan, so they look after the affairs, now they are in charge, they have the power and they have the absolute control. But so still, Afghan soil is being used against Pakistan, killing of our soldiers on a regular basis, attacks on our convoys, on our checkpoints, resulting in so many casualties. First part. And the second is, sir, when we say that the Taliban will take care of all these elements which will be threatening to them as well as to Pakistan, because we have to look after and safeguard our own national interest as well. But that isn't happening. Why?
I think
This
now
question-
Taliban being in power, they have different policy from what they were fighting against the NATO or the US forces in Afghanistan for the last 21 years or 20 years till the agreement. Now they are looking only for the internal affairs of Afghanistan. And now they are also having a policy to safeguard its national interest. And even if it is,
Is their national interest in alignment with Pakistani national interest, or there are issues?
of course there are issues.
Deodorant line is perhaps one?
Yes. What, for example, if we talk about the TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, so they consider now it is the internal matter of Pakistan, right? Yes, they have offered a kind of the mediation role, third-party role, to bring the TTP and the Pakistan government closer together and to have negotiations, and there are certain of rounds between the two. But they say, the Afghan government, I mean the Afghan Taliban, that you have to deal with them by your own means. So here, there is a problem of a kind of friction between the Pakistan government and the Afghan Taliban government. I mean, the TTPF, it's operating across the border, or they have a kind of clash with the Pakistan's military or something like that. So the Taliban government in Afghanistan, so they only say that, okay, we can have a mediation role, but we can't stop them like that.
Because they were part of the overall Taliban
umbrella.
Yes?
Yes, and have, I mean, the Afghan Taliban or the TTP or the Haqqani network or Al-Qaeda or even the Khorasani group, all of them, they were fighting against the NATO forces and the US forces. So that's why they were having they were on the same page that time. But now, among them, now the Taliban, they are in the power, they are in the government. So that's why they are now only having a kind of, how to say, just to maintain the power like that and not to have bad relations with any of its group or of its allies, including the TTP. I think there is a problem.
All right. Now, last quick comment from you, IG Saab, and that is, again, something related to your previous answer. You mentioned about a few things. For example, we did discuss about the humanitarian issues, about the economic problems that the Taliban regime they're facing. But sir, again, one very serious question, and that is about the killing of Khorasani, the Mohammed chapter chief. And this man was a hardcore TTP and perhaps one of the most brutal ones as well. This is what we have also learned. This man was eliminated. Again, a lot of analysts do believe that, if Pakistan has let its airspace to be used against the killing of Zawahiri, this was a gift given to Pakistan. Let's assume that for a moment that it's correct. Now, sir, At the same time, we are witnessing that our convoys, our checkpoints, all along the Afghan border are being challenged not only by TTP or Al-Qaeda or IS, but also from groups like BLA and all these Baloch Liberation Front and every. Now, these are the groups which have been declared illegal, illegitimate and terrorist groups. How to handle that now, sir? Is this the right time, or should we again depend on the Afghan government? Because you very categorically mentioned that the Indian embassy has been opened. They were never in contact with the Afghan Taliban. They were sidelined. I'm talking about India during this last 1 year or so. But now they are gaining their ground through various sources by spending money, by using these splinter groups against Pakistan. So, sir, what difference will it make whether the Taliban are in the government, or it was Ashraf Ghani, or XYZ for that matter, sir? If there is a threat, there is a threat.
Of course, going by the statistics, after the installation of Taliban government in Afghanistan, the terrorist acts have surged, and in particularly attacks on the security forces, it has multiplied. And there are cross-border incursions. And we have also seen that in the past few days, there was movement of the armed Talibans in Swat area. So this also indicates if the state of Pakistan does not handle these issues with an iron hand and under tough terms and conditions, if at all negotiation is considered to be a solution, then the paramount consideration to my mind should be that the message should be clear that the territory in Pakistan would not be used for any parallel administration. There would be no armed movement if they can only be here if they want to have a peaceful life and abide by the Constitution of Pakistan, the laws of Pakistan. We have to demonstrate that Pakistan is a responsible state where the Constitution of Pakistan also forbids the functioning of any armed non-state actors.
Correct.
And the Anti-Terrorism Act and all penal laws forbids this. So when we say that we have a good governance, one of the most essentials of good governance is rule of law. So any group which wants to be part of the mainstream has to make it sure that they would not in future indulge in such kind of acts.
All
so
right,
this has to be...
Thank you very much, sir, for your comments, for your presence in our program. I would also like to thank Dr. Manzoor Afridi Saab and also Asif Durrani Saab for his presence as well. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow at 8:05 p.m. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.